Hello, fourth grade. So today we are going to start the learning objective. I can create an original seascape. And remember what a seascape is. A seascape is a picture of water, and we're going to use old pages out of old books as our paper, and we're going to paint those and then tear them to create a collage, a torn paper collage, that then we're going to add some boats and clouds, and our boats are going to be different sizes to show depth or show the illusion of space. We're going to make it look like our paper's going back into space. So we'll put larger boats up front and medium boats in the middle and small boats in the back. So the way that we're going to start this is you're going to get, if you get a big book, a book that has larger pages, you probably only need 2 or 3 pages. If you get a book that's smaller, like I did for my example, the book pages for this were much smaller. This is a much smaller book compared to this. So I did, on the smaller book, I did 6 pages. On the larger book, I'm doing 3. So 6 is 2 times 3. So if you're doing large, you'll do 3 pages. Small book, if you have a small book, then you'll do 6 pages. So what I want you to do, and this one's torn, but I'm still going to paint it because I end up tearing the paper anyway, so this torn part doesn't matter. Rough edges don't matter. It doesn't need to be trimmed up or cleaned up. 2 pages are going to be for your water. I want your water to have 2 different colors, and then 1 page, or you could do half and half, should be the sky colors. Now on my finished example, I did some purples and some blues, but they almost look like they kind of belong to the water, so I don't know. If you want to do purples and blues, that's fine. And maybe you just use this kind of blue for the sky and then you use the other 2 blues for the water. I don't know. It's completely up to you. But for my example that I'm painting today, I think I'm going to do more of like a sunrise or a sunset and do some reds, oranges, and yellows. So I'm going to do my sky paper first. And what you want to do is get a paint tray, water basin, and a large paintbrush because you want to paint the whole paper. And since I'm going to do reds, oranges, let's see, I've got a yellow orange over here I might like to use. So I'm getting a puddle of water on top of the color. So I'm taking my paintbrush, I'm dipping it in the water, and then I'm just pulling it across the edge of the oval. And the water that's in the bristles squeezes out onto the top of the oval. And then I'm gently touching the oval with the bristles of my paintbrush. I'm not pushing it all the way down for the metal to touch. Just gently the tip, and I'm going to paint this whole paper. And so you have a blue placemat under your work because you're going to be painting the edges, and you're going to get this paint on the blue placemat. And if you want it darker, you're just going to keep adding more color, or if you want it lighter, then you'll just add more water. I like lighter, but you might prefer darker, so it's completely up to you. So I'm going to rinse my paintbrush off, and I'm going to go to the yellow orange and add some yellow orange and let those 2 colors touch on the paper. Okay, so that's my first paper. That's going to go on the drying rack. And book pages are kind of thin paper, so they'll dry pretty quickly. And it might curl a little bit on you, but you're going to put this on the drying rack. And then your other 2 papers you're going to do in blues for the water. So I have a turquoise blue, you have a blue-green color, and then you have a regular blue. So you have 3 blues to choose from. You can use just 2 blues, or you could use all 3. It's completely up to you. So I'm going to get water on top of those colors, the blue-green color, the turquoise color, and the blue. I want you to paint the whole paper. Don't leave any white paper poking through. And this will go on the drying rack. Finally, this last paper. So after you're finished painting, all of your papers go on the drying rack. Then you're going to need to get a paper towel to dry off your placemat. Your placemat's going to go back over underneath the turn-in box. Your water basin will get poured out. Paintbrush will go bristle side up in the bucket, and your paint tray will go back in the drawer. Now you're going to get a background paper that you're going to glue everything onto. And the color doesn't really matter. You just might want to pick something from the stack that I have out or the basket. You're going to write your name on there and the day you have art, day A, day B, day C. You're going to flip it over And you can do it this way, vertical, or you can do it horizontal. I'm going to go ahead and do it vertical since my first example is done horizontally. So you're going to take your papers, and the first thing that you want to do is pull out your blue papers that you're going to use for the water. And I have some blues torn from my example that I have left over, so I'm going to use those too. And if we have any extra torn papers that weren't used, you might be able to use some of those as well. And, oh, you know what? You don't want to start with the blue paper. Goodness. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go vertical. And so the first thing you want to do is you want to work top to bottom. And you want to start with your sky, the colors that you're going to do in your sky. So I'm going to do a purple sky and a magenta or pink sky. So I've got some torn paper from my previous example that I can use. And I'm going to tear this way. You could easily, it doesn't matter which way you tear. You can tear this way or this way. I'm going to tear this way because it's longer and it'll reach across farther. And you can just tear straight strips, or if you want it to be more wavy, you can kind of tear and pull and make it more wavy. It's completely up to you, your preference. So I'm going to start with the dark purple at the top. And what I like to do is find a paper that has kind of a straight edge. Like up here, this is kind of a straight edge. I might even use my scissors to trim it to make it straight. And glue that across the top of my paper. And it doesn't reach all the way, but that's okay. All right, and so this part, this part of our assignment is gonna take up a lot of glue. So typically I would say just put a line of glue and glue it down, but with this, the papers like to curl, so you really need to put a frame of glue around the whole edge of your paper so that they lay flat. And I'm gonna line up the straight edge at the top and the straight edge on the side with the straight edge of my paper, because I don't want to see any of this brown poking through. And then this piece will fit nicely right here. I'll just cut the top off and make it straight. And then again, another frame of glue and lining up the corners. So now the rest of this I'm just going to glue on as is, and I'm going to use the straight ends to line up with the straight edges of my side of my paper. Frame of glue. And I don't want to pull this down too far. I get a brown space. I don't want to see any of this tan paper poking through or this brown paper poking through. So I just keep overlapping these and lining up the edges and scooting it up and overlapping until I don't have any brown poking through. So if I move this down, I've got some brown tan poking through, so I need to scoot this up. And I like to have different sized paper. I don't want it all the same length, because it'll create more interest if I have varying different lengths. So I'm going to tear this into 3 pieces. And this one I'll tear into 2. And you just make sure that you overlap the bottom edge of your last piece. So you know what? Before I keep going, I need to decide when am I going to change to the magenta color, and then when am I going to change to water? Because if I only leave myself a little bit of water, it's not going to leave me a lot of space to show the illusion of space with my boats. So I want to go ahead and start using the magenta paper. I want some light and some dark. Okay. All right, and again using the straight side to line up with the straight edge of the tan paper. Frame of glue, overlapping. I just got a little bit of tan poking right there, poking out, so I need to scoot that up just a little bit. I don't want any of your pieces to be flapping up or poking out, or if you pick up your paper and flip it around and the pieces are flapping around, they need to be glued down flat on your paper. So that's why I'm doing a frame of glue as I go. It's very important. Okay, so there's my sky, and I have all this paper left over. Somebody else might be able to use. And now I'm ready to move on to my blue. So I'm going to do a wavy piece at the tippy top. So I'm going to tear this way, then tear back this way, and then tear back down that way, and then tear this way. And I want this to be my top paper. Okay, again, tan, so I have to scoot this up. I have a hole there, but I'm going to do another piece going across to cover that up. And now I'm changing to my new blue, my second blue color. And I'm trying to always put those straight ends of the paper against the straight edge of my paper. If you have some that hang off later after you're finished, you can just flip it over and trim it off if you need to. But I'm trying to save myself that step by making sure the straight ends are lined up with the edge of the paper. So now that I have all my painted book pages torn and ready for my Seascape, I'm going to flip it over and I'm going to trim this last part off that hangs off down at the bottom. And I just use the edge of the tan paper to tell me where to cut. So there's my sky here and then my water. So now I want to make my 3 boats. I want to make a big boat, a medium boat, and a small boat. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw the bottoms of the boats, and that's all honestly that we need to draw. So I'm going to draw a diagonal line going up and another diagonal line going up over here. I think I'm going to use a black marker so you can see what I'm doing. You'll use a pencil. So I'm drawing a diagonal line for the bottom of the boat, and then I'm going to go straight across. So that's going to be my large boat. So now I'm going to draw a smaller boat, and I'm just going to have it sit on top of this boat and cut them out separate. So a diagonal line and a diagonal line, and a straight line across, and then an even smaller one, and a straight line across. So it kind of almost looks like a wedding cake or a birthday cake. Then I'm going to cut these out. So I'm going to cut on the diagonal line here and the diagonal line here, and then I'm going to cut straight across, and there's my big boat. Then I'm going to cut on the diagonal line here, the diagonal line here, cut straight across, and there's my medium boat. Cut on the diagonal line here, cut on the diagonal line here, cut straight across, and there's my small boat. And I have all this paper left over that I don't really need, so we'll keep this and use this for another project. So here are my boats. So I'm going to place them in the correct spots. So the large boat doesn't go up near the horizon line where the water meets the sky, because that's going to be farthest away, so it should be smaller. So I'm going to put a line of glue on the back of the boat, and I'm going to set the boat here behind a wave. Alright, then I'm going to do my medium boat, which goes up a little bit higher, somewhere in the middle ground. This was put in the foreground up front. This is going to go in the middle ground. And then my tiniest boat will go up near the horizon, near the background. Now I'm going to do white sails. And the white sails, you could just do a simple triangle. Honestly, a simple triangle will work. But I'm going to do one that looks more like a real sailboat, where you get a curve, the wind blowing it. And I think this will be, actually I don't think this is big enough for my big sailboat, but it's a little too big for my medium. So I'm going to make this just a little bit shorter. And I'm trying to cut the pencil lines off so I don't have to mess with those. Then I'm going to put glue on here, and this will get glued to my medium boat. And again, a triangle is perfectly okay. You don't have to do this funny shape. So I'm going to put this here so I can see how wide my large boat is, and I'm going to start with my curved line. Then it's basically a short little line on one side, and then you draw the top of a triangle. That's all you do. And that's a pretty good size. So I'll glue this on. Alright, and finally the tiniest boat. This is probably all I need for the tiny boat. And this one I think I will just do a simple triangle. And you know what? There's a triangle right here on my paper, so I'm going to use this. I'm just going to cut off the pencil line that's there. See if this will fit. Yep, that fits nicely. A dot of glue and glue that on. I always leave a little bit of space between the sail and the boat itself, the bottom of the boat, because that's where the people would be if they were in the boat. Alright, And so now I'm going to use the remainder of my white to cut out some clouds and add them to the sky. And you can do some cotton type of clouds. I like to do clouds that are kind of flat on the bottom and bumpy on the top. And then you're going to glue some of those there on your paper. Some big, some small, in the sky, so that the people looking at our artwork know that's the sky. And I'm going to even cut out some V's or some seagulls flying in the sky. Tiny little seagulls. You don't want to cut them out gigantic or they'll look like pterodactyls or something. And I'm just going to put a smidge of glue, just a dot of glue on each of those, and add those. Alright, and there you have your seascape, your original seascape, where you show change of size to show the illusion or create the illusion of space. Good job.